Hi, I'm Arlene, host of the television talk show Ask Arlene, which airs on Thursdays at 6:30. And as a business consultant and life coach, I help you to move forward in your business, project, or endeavor. So if you always wanted to write a book, but you just haven't seemed to get started, or you always wanted to 10x that business that you already have, expand it to the next level, you know exactly what you need to do, but you just haven't done it? Well, I've already purchased all the courses, read all the books, the Tony Robbins, all sorts. I have several degrees, including a master's degree and credits toward a doctorate. I've sat and met celebrities and done the networking. And what I realized is what I really needed was a mastermind group of people working toward my project, my business, or my endeavor. So what I've done is met with coaches and met with experts and put them together to work on your project. So join us today for our Mastermind networking group. I'll see you there. Click the link below and join us. Hello and welcome to the Arlene Show. We're so excited to be with you today. This is the Ask Arlene Show because this is the show where you have an opportunity to ask the questions and we answer them or find experts in the field to help us to answer your questions. So we're so excited today because we have a special guest with us. The special guest today is Dan Lebowitz. Dan is the executive director of an agency at none other than the esteemed Northeastern University. He's also a graduate of Harvard University, as well as Brandeis. So we're so excited because he's going to tell us his journey, his challenge about how he had to overcome fear, get unstuck, and how now he's able to live the best life ever. And in turn, we're going to learn from him how we can too. All right, so without further ado, hello, Dan.
Hi, how are you today, Arlene?
Great. How are you today?
I'm very, very good. And I'm very honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on. So Dan, tell us, how do we graduate from Harvard University and work at Northeastern and run an organization and raise funds? Let's begin. Tell us your story as to how you came here.
You know, my story is really one of humility. I think that, most people who arrive in situations sit in seats line. Too many of them will tell you that they pulled themselves up from their bootstraps. And yet I think that the power and possibility of pathways that we can take to better really start with engaging with other people and the number of people who've stepped in our lives. If we embrace that relationship, if we understand what relational ability can do in terms of outcome, it's one of the greatest inputs of your life to meet other people and have them help you on a trajectory to better. And, I lived a life where I was disabled as a kid and, I had very young parents who didn't have the skill sets to really understand disability or the disenfranchisement that came with it, and was lucky enough to meet a doctor who eventually was the team doctor of the Harvard Grad, which is North Carolina. And passed me the street one day, got out of his car and talked to me about how long I had the leg braces on, and injected himself in my life, and that intervention created a possibility for me to get the leg braces off, become a high school athlete, go to college, go to graduate school, and eventually just meet a number of people along that journey that put me in this seat. So, I'm honored that you reached out, but anybody watching this telecast could be in this seat. There's so many people with promise and possibility out here, and we need to, celebrate them and move them forward.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Although I know there's much more meat and potatoes to the story, but you just gave us the sprinkle. I don't know how deep you are into the science or the psychology of empowerment and positive thinking. But when you talk about your story, you remind me of the story that Zig Ziglar told. I don't know if you're familiar with it, about how there was a gentleman who suffered from an illness where he could not walk, he couldn't move. And then subsequent to that, he became a world-class athlete. And his concept was that had he not had that disease, he probably would not have gone on to be the amazing athlete that he was. But because he had that disability, that situation that made him stuck, that's what propelled him to greatness. So I know this is a little bit, maybe a challenge, but do you feel like perhaps had you not had the teen parents, had you not had the initial disabilities, perhaps you would not have been pushed as far as you were?
I always think that your journey defines you. And I think that the length of that journey, sometimes the longer the length of the journey, the better defined you get to be in terms of understanding your purpose on the planet, your purpose in terms of creating possibility for others, and your purpose for really making sure that you've lived a life under the eyes of God that is meaningful, that has the ability to touch others and pay forward all the blessings that you've had. And so, I think that the length of my journey, understanding disenfranchisement, understanding, just what it feels like to be left out, and then when you finally do get access, the challenge I think always is to make sure that when you have the access, you don't see it as some way to fuel your own ego, but instead understand that your power goes up when your ego goes down, and you embrace the humility of how lucky you were in the space and how many people have need for you to step in their lives and do great things so that
we want to get some insight as to how you were able to do it. So we know that you're talking about disenfranchisement. You're talking about your, you said creating possibilities. You mentioned, are you a believer? Do you believe that religion has been something that's propelled you forward as well?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, at so many different points of my life, people have stepped in my life, and I think to myself, why is that, and why always at my biggest point of need? And so I'm extremely spiritual in that sense, and always think that the two things that are largely lacking for many people are humility and gratefulness, and I try to embrace both of those on my journey and understand that there's a number of people out here that need that.
So it's wonderful when people have achieved and they're on the other side of the tracks, and they talk about gratefulness, and they talk about the collective consciousness and how they were propelled over there. So as a show and as a collective, what we're trying to do is help people who are not on the other side yet, or who are but want to move forward, to understand how. How did you do it? So you said there were some people that came into your life that helped you to do it, but that you also had to listen to those people. So one of them was a doctor who helped you to remove the shackles literally from your legs. Who else was it that impacted you, that made you believe in yourself and know that you could do the things that you're doing now?
I think that, because I understood what it was like to be disabled and actually not be of able body, one of the things I did when I became of able body was to start a personal training business. And in the context of that business, I met pro athletes, and I met, models and CEOs of corporations. Right.
So was that before or after you had already graduated from Harvard and had that experience?
While I was graduating from Harvard, I already had that business. And so a lot of the people that I met on the journey, I think that when people talk to me about Harvard or Brandeis, those are really nice things to have in your array. But for me,
Once you say Harvard, that's an entree to pretty much wherever it is that you'd like to go. So that's why I keep focusing on that. So what brought you there?
I do think that really what put me in the seat was the personal training business, because it really taught me that I could, through that medium, have access to people that I didn't have access to prior. Those people helped me. They helped me in my career. They propelled me always. I remember turning to one pro athlete and saying, thank you so much for everything you've done for me. And the athlete responded, I got as good as I gave. And I took that message and embraced it, thought to myself, I want to be that person who's always giving.
Encouraging and uplifting and helping the people. So you had this person that helped you to remove the shackles. And then subsequent to that, you started this athletic program. But what helped you to go from, okay, like everybody else, now I can walk, to now pushing and saying, okay, I'm going to launch this group that's now going to help other people to maximize their health and fitness. So one of the things that we're doing, just to let you know, because you may not know, is we have something called a 5,000 step per day challenge. So we're dealing with mainly business owners or people who want to achieve a goal, but we're saying, let's use physical fitness as a microcosm for what we want to achieve in our businesses. So we're starting with 5,000 steps, then we'll go to 10,000. And ultimately, by the end of the year, we expect people to be running and being at the top level of fitness for whoever they are, their level of fitness. So I understand that there's a connection between the mind and the physical body, and that health and fitness are essential. And that's probably something that helped you to move forward in your academics. But what made you say, I'm not just going to walk now and do my own physical fitness, but I'm going to start this organization to help other people?
I think a lot of what you do is really based out of a fear of returning back to where you don't want to be. So your journey, you followed a path that was in many ways helped by a number of people. And you sort of have to grab that self of that help and create a dynamic where you believe in you, and then you translate that into belief in yourself. And you look at your past traumas and you ask yourself, do I want to transfer those traumas, or do I want to transcend those traumas? And I think every day I woke up with the concept, I'm going to transcend that trauma, and I'm not going to transfer it. Instead, I'm going to help other people in trauma find their help, find their wraparound service, their need for relation, their support system to create better for themselves.
Okay. So that was wonderful. I applaud you for the work that you're doing to help other people to move forward physically. We had another young lady on the show who's an Olympian, Ruthie Bolton, and she spoke about her own physical journey, her physical fitness journey. What is it that helps you to push when you're on that treadmill or you're on that machine of any sort? What makes you go the extra mile? Is it when you really feel tired and you feel like you can't move forward? Or do you feel that because you're such a good athlete? Maybe you don't feel that. You just keep going.
For me, fitness is a trauma response. And I think that most people don't understand what an trauma response it is. We have so many kids around the country that are growing up in systemic racism and a variety of things that are impediments to them and traumatizing to them on so many different levels. And now we have what I would consider stackable trauma. And I would encourage everybody to embrace athletics as a trauma response, as a way to sort of get the body and the mind in sync and working together collaboratively to create a better sense of self, a sense of validation, a sense of your resilience, your persistence, and the greatness of promise that's in you. We don't celebrate our youth, and particularly underserved youth enough. And I think that physical fitness is really a great trauma response.
Okay, Dan, how do we take it from the ethereal to the practical? We know that physical fitness is essential. We know that it's wonderful. We know that it heals trauma. We know that it helps people to lose weight. It helps people at all levels. But the reason why many people are not engaging in it is because we find it to be hard. Okay, we find it to be challenging. So what is it that you tell people whether it's kids or adults who are finding physical fitness to be a challenge to move forward. Because some of the people who are business owners now, they can't do the 10,000 steps per day. They really feel like that's too much of a challenge. So what do you tell people to be able to get up and do that extra, 10 crunches, or to do that extra hour on the treadmill?
I try to explain to people that, a lot of people talk about outcomes or logic and things like that. But I think when people talk about outcomes, they forget that your input is your outcome. Right. And so the greater your inputs, the greater your outcomes. And again, I think when you can find that intersectionality between physical fitness and the peace that it brings, and intellectual fitness and the peace that brings, and the power of possibility that brings, then you're on a platform of self-efficacy, self-help, and the ability to help others because of the strength that you feel within yourself.
Okay, so I come to you, Dan. I am a person who has experienced trauma in my life, and I had the death of a mom. And as a result of that, I was not moving forward. I was sitting on my couch. I'm eating chips, and I need to go to the gym and start that routine. I come to you. I already know that I need to do this, but I'm not doing it. What do you tell me to help me to get started?
Maybe that you focus initially on why you're in trauma, right? And what might help bring you out of that trauma. And, in your case, having mentioned what you mentioned, I might say to you that, your mom's looking down at you, right? And how would you like to carry her integrity and her intentionality and her positive brand forward and be the best person that you can be? And then I would try to draw a parallel between that and fitness and create sort of that direct line of empowerment. Because at the end of the day, what I talked about, all these people stepping in my life, what they really are is empowered bystanders, right? They could have just watched me and gone about their day, but they didn't do that. They took the empowerment of being a bystander that knew they could make change, and they helped make change. And you asked me about my seat and my position. At my entity, we use the power of sport to make social change, right? And we use sort of that bystander empowerment model. So I start to think about life like if you're watching a middle school fight and there's two combatants in the middle of there, you have a whole circle of people fight and using their power and negativity. But what if they used it for positivity and started figuring out ways to intervene to make both people who are probably fearful in that circle to become better among themselves and better in terms of their social interactions with others? And so that's kind of, that's what I would tell you. And I think that my life path and what I do now is really about that bystander empowerment model.
Okay, so we're going to take a break for about a minute and a half. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about what you do now and how you're able to raise funds for this organization that you are a part of in your capacity, because you're doing very well with it. And so we want you to give us some insight. But before we do that for that minute and a half, I still want to focus in on how you transitioned, because I think there's really some meat and potatoes there. So everybody wants to transition. Everybody wants to do better. You say that you're using athleticism in order to do it, and that you had some people who came alongside you. I'm a coach. I'm a life coach and a business consultant. So what I do is help people to move forward in that business project or endeavor, depending on what it is that they're trying to do. Whether they want to start a business, expand a business, 10x it, whether they want to lose that 10 extra pounds, whether they want to write that book that they've always wanted to write, but they haven't done it. So I'm very interested in how you were able to make that transition and how other people can make that transition. So they came alongside you. You had the athletic person, you had the doctor. But what is it that you think, if there's one thing that you can point to when you were going through your trauma and, your parents were teenagers and they weren't really equipped with some of the tools that you needed at the time, what switched in your mind to say, okay, I can go to Harvard and I can, work at a top university, as opposed to I'm just going to continue with the status quo and ride the wave as, many of us do in society?
I think it's a combination of things. I think that, once these people did step in my life, I did see sort of the unbelievable possibility of what I could do, because I kind of believed in the spirituality of why they stepped in my life, right? I understood the length of my journey. I understood what that disenfranchisement was. So you take the fear of not wanting to return to where you were, promise and possibility of where you can go, a support system, I would really call wraparound services of people that constantly made me believe in the resilience and persistence that my journey sort of exemplified. And then
what were those support systems?
I would say those people, that none of those people didn't just do a one-off and enter my life. They stayed in my life. And I think that, realizing the power of relational.
Were they coaches? Were they teachers? Were they preachers? Who were
the doctor? It was athletes. It was certain coaches. It was certain teachers. There's a number of people that knew your journey, understood the length of that journey, wanted to help you transcend.
How did you make the connection with the star athletes, with the celebrities?
Say that one more time.
How did you make the connection with the celebrities? Because I think that's also significant to your story, that you were actually working with celebrities. You were working with people who were at the height of the game.
That was kind of by accident. I had a couple of corporate CEO clients who knew the athletes, and then the athletes entered my life. And I would say that we have a tendency to always think of pro athletes as unbelievably privileged, but the journey of most pro athletes, same type of journey, a long journey, maybe out of poverty, maybe out of disenfranchisement, maybe out of a number of things. And I would say that we don't give athletes enough credit for positivity and for, modeling positivity. We'll always focus on the negative behavior of one or two athletes, but there's so many in that athletic community that are exuding positivity or promise or possibility just by their very being. And I think
so. If you wanted to give advice to a business owner or advice to a person who is launching a project and they'd like to have an athlete as a sponsor or an athlete as a supporter in their venture, what would you tell them to do?
I would tell them to draw a network tree. Who in their network by 6 degrees of separation can get to the athlete that they want to interact with. And if it isn't that athlete, maybe a different athlete. But, you asked earlier about fundraising. Fundraising is really about contacting a few people who have the exact same mindset around creating access and opportunity for people. And then those people to create sort of a network tree of other people that you could contact. And I would say that, nothing doesn't come with everything comes with hard work, and it's hard work. You might make 100 phone calls a day to get 2 people to embrace with you, or 1 person to embrace, or on a given day, no people to embrace. But you wake up that next day, and just like you would hit a bag or lift weights or run a mile, you hit that phone the same way, or the social media the same way, and figure out what those 6 degrees of separation are and how you can create the connectivity to get past those 6 degrees and make it not only 1 degree of separation, but now you're tangent to the people that you want to be tangent to.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Well said. So to give you an idea of my background, I worked in politics for very many years. I worked on President Obama's campaign in the battleground state of Florida. I worked for the DNC. So I have an understanding of fundraising, and I have an understanding of drawing in the people. But one of the key tips is that you have to be in the circle. You have to be able to know the phone numbers in order to call them. So you really do have to have a concept of who the players are so that you know who to contact. So you know who the rainmakers are. But you were able to, at a very young age, draw people in. And that, I believe, was the beginning of your fundraising journey, which is what you use now in order to raise large funds for the organization Northeastern. So we're going to transition a little bit, and I really want to ask you a little bit about your job and what you do now and how you're able to raise funds. But I keep saying before we do that, we don't want to leave anything on the table that you could give us, any nuggets that you can give us regarding how you went from being that young person who did not have the promise You weren't even walking initially. You had parents that weren't able to really instill in you the tools that you needed, which is what we usually say is a recipe for disaster. And yet you're sitting here being interviewed as somebody who has accomplished greatness. Is there anything else that we've left on the table that you'd like to share with me that you think is key to how you made that transition, to how you crossed over? Because that's really what will help a lot of people, I think, to move forward.
I think one of the lessons that I've learned is that if you exude kindness will return to you. And I think that, you have a lot of different avenues that you could take. Initially when I was younger and I wasn't really walking well and I felt so left out, I had a lot of anger and I embraced that anger. And yet maybe, I learned from other people helping me that maybe I was embracing the wrong thing. Maybe if I embraced kindness, maybe if I embraced humility, maybe if I embraced gratefulness, and yet didn't just sit there and continually say how thankful I was, but try to figure out,
I love what you just said, being helpful and being kind. I've written a book. It's called The 10 Secrets to Networking. And one of the key secrets to networking is to give before you receive. So it's perfectly in line with what you just said. And with our last few minutes now, I want you to share with us what you do at the university and how we can glean from your wisdom regarding that.
Well, my entity is called the Center for the Study of Sport and Society. And when you hear the phrase, you wouldn't normally think that we're a social justice organization. But what we really do, we create curriculum in 3 areas. We create curriculum in violence prevention and intervention, and we create curriculum in stopping toxic speech, really an accelerant of those 2 other issues. When you think of the world, there's so many different microaggressions that we've learned through sort of the systemic and historical hatred that we've put forth in this country in many ways, right? And I think that our center works on engaging people in conversations that lead them to change agency. We don't legislate behavior. We don't tell you to do this and do that. We create safe spaces of conversation that lead to change agency, that lead to positive change. And I think whether it's fundraising or anything else we do, that messaging about creating safe space for conversation to lead to personal change agency that leads to real change, it appeals to an awful lot of people.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Dan, for joining us on the show today. Our time is far spent and we didn't even really get into much of what we'd like to. We just basically scratched the surface. But we want to say thank you to you. We'd like to say thank you to William and to Justin and to Gary and to Mel and everybody who looked toward making the show a great show. And most of all, of course, we want to thank you, our listeners, for being a part of us. And don't forget to subscribe, sign up for the 5,000 Steps Per Day Challenge, and learn all that you can. And I want you to come back this week at 6:30 at the same place, Thursday evening. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.